Hey, what's up, my friends? Zach Klein here on the Inner Circle podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with us this week on the show, and the show is moving forward without one of the original four co-hosts. Matt Ryan, of course, named the new president of football with the Falcons. He is trying to build something special in Atlanta, and that is taking, understandably, every single waking moment of his life to do that. So he is no longer a full-time host here on the pod. We will be filling that seat eventually. In the meantime, we will have many guests as we try to work out who will fill Matt Ryan's co-hosting abilities. It's gonna be hard. Someone's out there. We have a few names in mind, and of course, we will keep you in the loop as we move forward on that. We are having some of the best guests in the world on the Inner Circle pod, and this week, it is none other than an individual who ran the Senior Bowl. He was an NFL scout and front office member for years in the National Football League, and he is coming up on his one-year anniversary as a general manager of the Oklahoma Sooners. OU, of course, in the most recent college football playoffs. They are building something special in Norman, and Jim Nagy is one of the reasons why. On this show, he talks about the hardest part of being a college general manager as opposed to that in the National Football League. The daunting task of doing over 100 contracts in a single season. He fills us in on what that is like. Is there going to be any CBA talks between college football and universities down the road? And if he was commissioner of college football, what's the one thing he would do? The most important thing that is an underlying issue that he would change. Jim Nagy fills us in on that and more on this week's edition of the Inner Circle podcast. Enjoy. Jim, you were hired in February, not even a year ago, just finished your first transfer portal experience, and you would describe it at Oklahoma for the first time with you running point as?
Successful.
All right.
Chaotic, but successful. I think the biggest thing that we learned going through this and everything we're doing right now, especially for me, never worked in college football before, being an NFL lifer, everything's new. Everything's a first time go around for me. So we did have a good plan going into the portal. That was probably the most rewarding part of it was, the group had a really good plan. We attacked the portal. We had 11 guys in the first weekend. We signed 10 of them. And, we really identified a lot of needs going in. We were able to get those. And then, the rest of the portal was about adding some depth and some developmental guys that we saw a high ceiling with. It was crazy. There's no way around it. There's a lot of moving parts and it's hard to keep up, but no, we feel really good about the process.
So as a college GM, is it similar to like an NFL GM, I guess you could say?
Aaron, way crazier.
Way crazier?
It's way crazier, man. No. So I talk to my buddies in the NFL all the time about, because they're curious. They want to know what this college landscape's all about. And I will give all the college guys out there that are listening, might be listening here, is that you were right. The college guys always warn me like how crazy that space is. And I'll say this, just not a lot of time off. Recruiting never stops. That's a real thing. It never does. Last year, we went through the official visit process in June, and I went over to Italy to visit my son who was studying over there for a couple of weeks, and I was negotiating contracts the whole time for the 2026 guys. So it never stops. But I'll say this, like it's very competitive. There's a lot of adrenaline, which I kind of feed off both those things. So I've actually enjoyed the job way more than I thought I would. But there's a lot to it. We just got done renegotiating 80 contracts, and, most NFL GMs would maybe do 20 in a year. Todd, you correct me if I'm wrong. I would think most NFL teams would do 15 to 20 contracts a year, in free agency. The NFL stuff's kind of slotted, so you're not even negotiating those anymore. They're rookies. So, man, but it's never a dull moment. I'll say that.
Do you think it's like, I think last week or our last podcast, I talked about how, it's a frenzy with this portal because there is no draft. So if you miss out on a specific need here or there, it's, in the NFL, if you don't get it in free agency or you don't want to spend that money or the player's not available or whatever, you at least can fall back and add the position and the value and the depth, in the draft. It might not be apples to apples, but you're going to fill it. Yep. In college, in the portal, is there more pressure? Because if you need a specific guy here or there and you don't get that guy here or there, there's no backfilling it. You're just going to have to turn to your existing roster and go, we're going to have to find someone who's going to have to step up or something along those lines. So there's become more pressure in the portal?
That's a good question. I don't know if I saw it as pressure, Todd. I think that, This is a big building. There's a lot of people that touch these players. So, going into the roster retention process that really started after our final game against LSU. I'll take you back to the end of October. I spoke to the team and I told them, like, listen, you're going to have a lot of people in your ear right now. There's a lot of schools already starting to retain players. Guys, we're going to hold off on that because all our goals are still ahead of us. We had 4 more games left. We were at Tennessee. We were at Alabama, and then we were home against Missouri and LSU. I'm like, if we win out, we're in the playoff, guys. So I don't want you guys distracted from our goals. So we're going to put this off until we make this playoff, and then we'll start the process. And to the players' credit, they stayed locked in, and we won those 4 games. We went on the road and won in Neyland Stadium in a night game, which was tough. We were the first team since the Joe Burrow LSU team to go into Tuscaloosa and get a win. So all credit to the players. So that process started after the LSU game, and we downloaded with this entire building. I had one-on-one downloads with every position coach, everyone in our, sports performance team, the athletic trainers, the sports science guys, the strength and conditioning, our equipment guys, anyone that touches the players and would have insight on how this team should look next year. We had those conversations, and then Coach Venables and I obviously got together and went through different scenarios on depth and guys we wanted to prioritize. So that was a process in and of itself. And you had to get the roster, you had to get those players done first. So we didn't take for granted that all these guys wanted to come back or we were able to get them back. No, thank God we're through that process and we didn't lose a single starter in the portal, which is great. That was the goal. We didn't want to lose those frontline players, and we only lost a couple depth pieces that were coming back with with significant play time. I think we lost 2 guys with over 30% playtime. The rest were all really minimal playtime guys for us. Not that we wanted to see them leave. It'd be great to bring an entire team back, but that's not reality. Yeah, and back to your point with the portal, then we knew what holes, we knew where the needs were, and we attacked it and had a good plan. But you're right. If we weren't able to get those players, then you're really leaning into your freshmen and some of these guys, developmental guys, to really hit for you. But you don't want to just hope. Hope's not a plan, right? So we did. We really wanted to attack the portal and fill those needs.
You mentioned talking to all the different guys in the building to get their take and all that stuff. I just curious. You're a former NFL guy as well, and now you're here in college, and you're seeing more teams in college get some personnel guys or executive level guys from the pros into college. So my question is do you also see, and are you guys doing it, where you're almost setting your front office up, kind of cloning what the NFL offices do, not necessarily from a GM and cap perspective only, but scouting? Because now, in the past, you used to just scout the high school kids and figure out. Now your world has turned out to basically anybody who plays football. High school, you still have to fill out and chase those guys, but then you're looking at everyone on other rosters to see who might become available, who might not be happy, and not be caught, not ready if a guy does hit the portal and all of a sudden you're like, wait, we need a receiver. Is he good? No, you got to have that like a pro personnel department in a college department almost.
I'll say this, I'll give a lot of credit to the leadership here at Oklahoma. Like, I was never planning on working in college football, and until some opportunities came up last fall when I was at the Senior Bowl, I didn't really see it as a reality. I didn't really see a need for guys like me, NFL evaluators. But then they start paying players in college, and there really is a need. So I'll say this, for the history of college football, coaches have had full autonomy to, recruit who they want to recruit and evaluate whoever they want to evaluate, recruit how they want to recruit. And then, you get the sign off of the head coach and the guys on the team. And this isn't, particular to OU. I think the leadership here at Oklahoma saw an opportunity to really kind of implement a new structure in college football, a more of an NFL model. You're hearing a lot about, colleges going to more of an NFL model. Well, I'll speak for OU and maybe not some other schools. I know a lot of schools are, giving guys the GM title, but maybe the structure is not changing. I mean, this is a true collaboration with Coach Venables and I together. And we have a 10-person scouting staff. Lake Dawson was in the NFL for 30 years as a player and an executive. He's on the staff. So between the two of us, we've got over 60 years of NFL experience. And I think the biggest thing is, and this is the sell in recruiting, is that we've got a scouting staff that's doing nothing but evaluating players and watching tape. There's a grading scale in place, which there wasn't in the past. And really, that's across college football, just getting in this thing and talking to people. Like, all this stuff is new. So, once the players get worked up through our scouting staff, then it'll get kicked to the coaches, right? So we're basically just trimming a lot of fat for our coaching staff. So rather than them sitting at their desk watching 3 hours of huddle tape a day on high school players, they're maybe watching, 15, 20 minutes, cruising through a guy real quick. And, we want our coach. This is a true collaboration. If the coaches don't see it the same as us, that's when we have weekly meetings, call them discrepancy meetings. And we'll sit in my office here and we'll watch the players together. And if we can't get on the same page on a player, then we just move on. There's a million high school players out there. Well, we want to land in a place where the coaches certainly need to be invested in the players they're going to be coaching and developing. So, but we're just doing a lot of the legwork on the front end so they can really spend more time with their guys developing them. If that makes sense, we see that as a really competitive advantage for our players at OU, is that they're just going to get a lot more time with their position coaches than they would at another place.
Go back to what we talked about, 80 contracts. Of those 80, Jim, how many were incoming freshmen, how many are portal, and how many were recurring OU players that you re-up for 2026?
Well, the freshmen were essentially done. I didn't include them in the count. If you include them in the count, you're at like 105, 106, 107.
That's crazy.
But so yeah, it's for us this year, I think we lost 28 guys in the portal. We brought in 17 in the portal. Yeah, and then all the current roster players that we retained. So yeah, it was a process. And the great thing is, I heard a lot of horror stories coming into this job of the agency, the representation for these players. And I know Todd's group, Athletes First, does a great job, and there's some other outfits that I dealt with on a daily basis at the Senior Bowl. I had a lot of great relationships with those guys and worked really hard at those relationships. But I just, over the last 3 or 4 years, knowing their reluctance to get into this college space, like, a lot of the big boy agencies wanted no part of this thing. And then, now 3 or 4 years later, they're kind of realizing, man, we can't just dip our toe in. Like, we better jump all in here. We're not going to be able to get these guys when they come out of college. So the good part is, dealing with a lot of, retaining our roster. I was dealing with a lot of the same guys I've been dealing with the last 7 years of the Senior Bowl. And so those relationships help. We've done business together. We know each other. There's familiarity. There's trust. So it made some of those negotiations a lot smoother than if you were just dealing with, a kid's 7-on-7 coach or so. That's what I heard a lot of. Jim, you're going to deal with 7-on-7 coaches, high school coaches, uncles, whatever it might be. And there's still a little bit of that. But I think really quickly, these established NFL agents are really starting to take over the college space, which is a good thing.
So a quick follow-up, Jim, because do you have these conversations with the guys where every one of the roster thinks they should have a pay increase from the next year? Or do you sit them down and, I guess my mind is boggled that every single year it's a renegotiation with the players or staff. And if they hit the portal, you had 11,000 kids in the portal. And if they don't get picked up, are they going back to in all these schools, not yours specifically, at Oklahoma or Indiana or wherever it might be, and those spots are already filled, what happens to the kids? So I guess the question is, of the 11,000 that hit the portal, do you know how many guys are still looking for schools?
I don't know that number, Zach. I don't know that. But yeah, all those scenarios you played out happened on our team this year. There were some guys that jumped in the portal and were encouraged to do so by the representation, and they got out into the portal and realized maybe there wasn't quite the market that they thought, and they ended up back here as Sooners, and we welcome those guys back. In terms of guys expecting, pay increases every year, this is a business, and we have to pay. There has to be a baseline of how these guys are getting compensated, and it's about production. There's obviously an acquisition cost out of high school that you pay these players, but once they're here in Norman, like that, they have to produce. And again, this is the SEC. I know the Big Ten just won their 3rd straight championship, and kudos to Indiana, man. What an incredible team, and that was a lot of fun to watch. Just go through the playoffs. I wish we would have been there playing them, but I have a lot of admiration for what Coach Signetti and everyone on the staff did up there in Bloomington. But yeah, I mean, you have to have production. So if you come in as a freshman, you don't play a lot. We understand that. We understand the SEC is a really hard league to come in and play as a freshman, especially in the trenches. I mean, it's really big boy football in the trenches in the SEC. Everyone knows that. So we'll give those guys some grace. But are they doing everything in the building that they need to do to earn an increase or keep their salary level at minimum? What are they doing in the weight room? What are they doing in practice? What are they doing in the classroom? Are they high maintenance, low maintenance? So all those things kind of feed into that renegotiation. Like, okay, we understand you only played 4% of the snaps, but you did all these things that were great, and that's why we're still invested. Or you played 4% of the snaps, and look at all the lists you were on throughout the season. And you really better step it up next year, or this is going to be a different conversation. So we're trying to base everything on production here. The acquisition cost out of high school is pretty high, but not as high as in the portal. So
that's what I wanted to know, the financial part of it. Like, how do y'all determine, like, we want this edge rusher? How do that number start? Is it like a market that's set? If he's like, okay, this guy's at 400,000, the top tier rusher, or the top tier quarterback set 3.5 million, whatever it is. How do you guys determine how much a guy's going to get on the business side of things?
Aaron, that's a great question, man. And that's really probably the hardest part of this job. When I do talk to my friends in the NFL, like if you're a GM right now and you're getting ready to go into free agency and you need a left tackle, or let's just use your example, you need a pass rusher, you need an edge guy, you're going to know, depending on the level of the player, if you're looking for a solid starter, if you're looking for a Pro Bowl level guy, like you're going to know within a certain range what that's going to cost you. In college, because there's no transparency in what these guys are getting paid. I mean, you are really sometimes throwing a dart in that opening number, right?
That's
like
crazy.
It really is. Like you're hoping you don't shoot too low and turn off the player and the agent, and you certainly hope you're not shooting too high and leaving money on the table for your organization.
No such thing.
So it does create a challenge, Aaron. I mean, I think that a lot of things could get cleaned up pretty quickly in college football.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have pointed to a CBA, putting a CBA in place. I think that having some sort of rookie wage scale would certainly help with that initial number out of high school. Because what you don't want is your roster to be upside down.
Yeah.
I won't name names, but there was a particular coach in a Power 4 conference last year at Media Days who openly admitted that he lost his football team last year, back in 2024. And, someone in the media followed up, well, why do you say that? And he said, well, my upperclassmen found out that all the freshmen and sophomores were making more than them. And that's obviously, from a cultural standpoint, that's a terrible place to be, right? Mm-hmm. But that's just kind of where college football is at. If you want to recruit at a high level, acquisition cost is so high. So there's a lot of. So I think if you had some sort of freshman wage scale would certainly help, and then just transparency in these salaries would help as well. Like there needs to, like right now for me, I'm calling a lot of GMs kind of outside of the SEC and teams that we typically recruit against, but also schools that kind of recruit at the same level. Is also, reaching out to some Big Ten GMs that we don't usually go head to head against for players. Like, what are you paying your starting receivers? What are you paying your backup D tackles? Because there's no other way to do it.
Trying to get a starting point. Yeah, that's crazy.
I think that's where we have a big advantage as an agency, Athletes First, because we have so many agents and so many players, whether it's portal guys, whether it's 5 stars, 4 stars, guys renewing from a sophomore to a junior, guys coming from high school, class of 27, 26. We have all those numbers. So I think that gives us an advantage when we're having conversations with schools, probably a disadvantage, like to your point, shooting in the dark a little bit on your end. You don't want to go too low. You don't want to go too high, even though I think there's never such a thing as too high, but I understand what you're saying.
That's why you're a good agent, Todd.
Yeah, great agent. He's a great agent.
Do you guys also, Jim, I know there's teams that do it, take the name and the face out of it, which this is interesting, though, because I almost confused myself with the question because of what you said with the upside down roster of seniors making more than freshmen. In the NFL, teams will say, this is how much we want to, of our cap, that we want to invest in the D-line. Period. This is how much we want to have on receivers. This is how much we want to put into our linebackers. And they take the names out of the equation, and then they take that amount. And obviously, they got to be fiscally responsible to make it work there. But if you guys did that, but then you have to have like a little asterisk mark because the upperclassmen versus the young kids, that could throw things off too. How do you guys do that?
We do it just like the NFL teams do. So we have allocations by position. We try to hit those marks and be responsible. Again, you got to be disciplined in this whole thing when you're putting it, when you're working under a cap system, which we are. With the whole roster construction, you have to have discipline. You got to you got to have a walkaway number. Before we started the roster retention process, we had an opening number and we had a walkaway number. And unfortunately, there's a couple times where we had to pivot and walk away from players we didn't want to walk away from. But if you don't stay strict to your models, we've already got this thing built out for 27 and 28. Really the 27 models coming together, 28s. But we know where we want to be there. I think we only have 128 commitment right now, but yeah, you just got to be disciplined in your approach.
Well, we could talk portal. I don't know if you have any more, Zach, on portal. I want to make sure of his time, but I want to get to Senior Bowl stuff too, but go ahead.
For sure. Just a couple quick things. Jim, how do you maintain culture in this high dollar NIL yearly free agency where things are out of hand? There seems no end in sight in terms of the financial package. Everybody wants more. You can't give them more. How do you keep the team together and control a winning culture?
Yeah, Zach, that's a great question. I'll take you back all the way to it was almost a year ago now. I came in and interviewed around in February, late February last year, and the Sooners were coming off a rough year. They went 6-7 in 2024, and usually, again, my whole life in the NFL was spent walking hallways of college buildings on a daily basis. And I've been in a lot of losing buildings. And usually they feel a certain way, Aaron, as a player, I know you had a lot of great success, but you've also been a part of some losing teams as well. And those buildings usually feel a certain way. This one didn't, man. It was really surprising. And I had some background with Coach Venables, not a ton. I actually scouted a bunch of guys on this coaching staff, so I had some familiarity with those guys going back to when they were players. But the amazing thing on that visit, that interview day, was just how this building felt. You could tell the culture was really getting set. So that made me really optimistic. That's why, frankly, that's why I was bought into the job after I sat down with Coach Venables and we had a shared vision for what a team should look like, what a locker room should look like, what players, the value system these players need to have. You felt great about it, and then when I got into the tape and realized, man, there's some real talented players on this roster. I spoke to the team in August, and I told those guys, there's everything in this meeting room right now to win an SEC championship. I truly believe that. Now, we didn't win the SEC, but we did make the playoff. This coaching staff, all credit to them. They've brought in good players, they've brought in good people. And I think, in this new era of college football, we are really going to be dialed into the people and to the families that are around these players. Because, if there's a lot of dysfunction, if there's a lot of chaos, it's going to create it in your building. And right now we don't have any of that. It's really a stable environment. We've got kids that are about the right stuff. And to your, going back to the point of retaining all the starters, we were able to do that. There's a lot of leaders in this building. And I think when you have that, it's easier to maintain that than establish that. And we already have that established, if that makes sense. So we feel really good about where we've got things going forward. The portal guys were great here. There are reasons for, first question, why'd you jump in the portal? But, and again, the reasoning for all these guys made sense. It wasn't about money. It was about opportunity. It was about winning. Some of the guys were just, they're tired of losing at their current schools. They're like, man, I want to come here and play, but I want to be a part of a winner.
Winning, yes.
And so just bringing it, really being mindful of the people you bring into the building it matters a lot.
Final thing for me on the portal is that the NFL and the College Football Association, Jim, breaking news, just agreed to allow 3-time NFL Defensive Players of the Year back into college. So if Todd wants to negotiate AD to go to OU, what's the market for AD for the Sooners?
Unprecedented. Unprecedented.
We're going to have to, we're going to have to get some donors behind this one. I don't know how we're going to do it.
It's a whole nother show to talk about the stuff that people aren't talking about, which is the non-cap dollars in terms of creativity with these players and NIL Go and the marketing system that exists to pay players more through marketing deals that don't come off the cap. But that's a whole nother question or conversation that really is a whole interesting thing in terms of how Jim and all these teams are trying to navigate and pay these players what they think their value is and still manage the cap. cap and the whole thing, and still have a good team and win games, which people seem to forget is the end goal.
Most important thing.
Well,
yeah.
Jim also, as we talked about, ran the Senior Bowl before he became the GM here. And I always say that I feel like the Senior Bowl potentially maybe is like the first step in the draft process that sort of like, all these different pieces of the pie. You have pro days, you have combines, you have obviously their college career, but Senior Bowl being one of the end of the season, through the draft process, first thing. And Aaron wants to apologize. Go ahead, Jim, or Aaron, apologize to Jim for how many times he tried to get you to come down to Mobile to be inducted to the Hall of Fame.
I was playing football, I was training, it was all over the place. Obviously I love my experience there. It opened up a lot of different doors for me, obviously being a guy that was considered undersized, right? A lot of guys said, you had a lot of success in college, but you ain't the biggest guy. I don't think you can be able to translate that, at the NFL level. I was able to go to the Senior Bowl, compete, right, and just show what I can do. Obviously having different meetings there, experiencing that, opened up some doors for me, man. So always appreciate it for that, man, because I think I like the part to be able to compete against different talent, right? It's supposed to be the best of the best. I know right now college football is a lot different. Not a lot of these top tier guys want to, take the risk of maybe not having the best performance or getting themselves hurt to go out there, but I always seen it as an opportunity just to show what I can do. Play the game of football that I love to do at the highest level against the best talents, man. And I enjoyed it, Obviously, it was them long days, and then you might get a call 7:00 at night with an NFL team and just come down and ask you some silly question. I'm like, what I gotta come down and ask you how many years is how many months is in a year? Ask me questions like that. I'm like, what is this, man? But it was one hell of an experience, man. And I apologize that I couldn't make it. I apologize
good,
that I was playing football and had to train and all that. I apologize, man.
No, you're good. You're good. No, I distinctly remember that week. No, I wasn't running the game when you came out. I was working for the Chiefs actually, and I remember one of our young scouts calling me, and he really was struggling with your evaluation, and I hadn't watched your tape yet, and he was like, the way he was describing you, he's like, man, this kid's dominant. He's making all these plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's so disruptive. His get off, everything. And he's like, but I don't know what grade to put on him because he's undersized, and I'm worried about that. And I was like, man, I'm just listening to you. Like, and then I told him the grade on our scale. I'm like, you're describing this. So like, have some balls and put that grade on him, And so, and again, as a young scout, you got it. Sometimes it's hard, because you were an outlier, man. You were an outlier. It is what it is. You were an undersized guy that ended up being, one of the top 5 defensive player of all time. But I'll never forget all your one-on-ones against Zach Martin.
See, we talked about that. We talked about that before. Yep.
Two gold jackets going at it. It felt like every rep. It felt like you guys were like trying to figure it out where you went against each other every time in those one-on-ones. But yeah, man, I will say this, over the 7 years I was there, Aaron, I think you would have, enjoyed your experience a little more. We stripped away all the teams couldn't grab you at any time. We did all formal interviews. Like your days would have been a lot easier, but no, it's Senior Bowl time. And Todd, back to your point about, that's where we coined the term, the draft starts in Mobile. Like we really did feel like that was the first step of the draft process. Over the last 5 years, we'd had over 100 guys drafted, which was over 40% of the entire draft class those 5 years. Like last year, we had 50 of the top 100 players. And I say this, I had an agent call me just on Saturday. We were moving our freshmen into the dorms, and I see this agent call. I'm like, man, I got to pick this up. And he was struggling with sending a player to the Senior Bowl. He's like, and I was like, well, I know your guy's name, but where do teams have him? I haven't watched this guy's tape. And he's like, well, he's on that borderline late first round, early second round. I'm like, perfect, man. That's the sweet spot. Said when, back in the day when I was in scouting in the league, like if you really boiled it down and asked the scouts, what are they looking for, through the process? They're trying to figure out which guys are mature enough to handle the NFL lifestyle, right? Like more money in your pocket, more time on your hands. Like, is this guy going to be able to come to the pros and really, settle in and get his work done? Or is it going to take him 2 or 3 years to like figure it out? Aaron, you played with a bunch of guys like that, right? A lot of talented dudes wash out of the league really fast because they can't figure it out. So, that used to be what we looked for. now that these guys are getting paid in college, and some of them
Yes.
7 figures, have a lot of money, like the NFL, all they got to do is talk to, us and people that work for the collectives, and they can figure that part out. Is this guy mature enough to handle being a pro? Now what they're trying to figure out is how competitive are they, and how much do they really love football, right? And in this particular case, I told the agent he played a skill position that lends itself to being a little diva-ish. And I said, man, if you send your guy there, like just sending him there is gonna speak volumes that he's not afraid to freaking compete.
Yes.
And he loves football. And I told all the guys every year at orientation dinner, I'm like, you've made a statement by showing up in Mobile, and it's gonna matter in this draft, but it's also going to matter in 4 or 5 years when the team wants to give you that $100 million life-changing contract. They're going to look at how you handled the draft process. And if you're the dude that ducked out of all-star games, and you ducked out, didn't do shit at the combine, and and you tried to do it on you did they call it the a la carte pre-draft process now. They're not going to feel good about handing you that $100 million, because Aaron, when they paid you that with the Rams, expected you to put your foot on the gas, right? Not take your foot off the
Exactly.
gas.
Exactly.
And you put your foot to the
Yep.
gas, and that's why you're going to be in Canton, Ohio shortly. No, but a lot of these guys get paid that life-changing money,
And get
and that's
comfortable.
just human nature, man.
Yeah.
You make enough money to take care of your family for generations, like it's easy to take your foot off the gas. So it's just a little lens into, like, I think how teams look at these players. Man, I feel like the guys that go to Mobile and compete, it says a lot how they're wired, and I think teams put a lot of value in that.
Jim, we had John Gruden on the Inner Circle podcast a little over a month ago, and he says he still, to this day, shows the Senior Bowl tape of practice of AD just kicking everybody's ass as the film of what it takes to take advantage of an opportunity, and the rest is history. When you look back at your time there, was there one story, one guy who might have been like AD flying under the radar, who took advantage of the moment, and for that individual, the rest is history?
Yeah. The one I always bring up is because he's turned into such a great player, is Quinn Miners, the guard for the Denver Broncos.
I literally knew you were going to say that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch. Like there's a kid last year. I was just talking to my wife. We were on a walk yesterday, and the Jacksonville Jaguars last year, they picked Travis Hunter, with their first pick, and then they picked 8 straight Senior Bowlers. Their new GM picked 8 straight Senior Bowlers, and one guy that they didn't pick is a guy named Danny Strigow, who is a defensive end, an edge guy from Minnesota. So again, we get into the week last year, and guys have a couple good practices. Now the thing is, like, if you have a viral moment on social media, the agent's looking to pull the player out. Like, you've had your moment, you went to Mobile, you've made a splash play in practice. Now let's get the hell out of there. Well, so again, I'm sitting there on Wednesday night trying to add some players to the roster, and I call this kid Danny Strigow up. It's 10 o'clock at night on Wednesday night. We get him on the first. I was like, Danny, you ready to wear that Gophers helmet one more time? And he's like, you're damn right. Let's go. He gets on a plane 6 a.m. out of Minneapolis, lands in Mobile. We get a car, bring him from one of our volunteers, brings him straight to the stadium. Practice has already started. We get him padded up. He goes out there and practices on Thursday, plays in the game. Now, he didn't get drafted, but I heard something on Sirius Radio the other night. I was listening there. They were giving the Jaguars draft class a bunch of praise. And the guy who's played the most minutes for that out of that Jacksonville draft class was Danny Strigow. So, like, it really speaks to, how he was wired. But the Quinn Miners thing is a crazy one, because that was the COVID year. They completely eliminated Division III football that year. Like, they did not play Division III ball. So our highest graded offensive lineman over that summer was Rashawn Slater, the great left tackle for the Chargers. He decided to opt out of Northwestern that year, so he was in Dallas training with Duke Manyweather, and Quinn Miners was there with him. I'd watch Quinn's tape from the year before at Wisconsin Whitewater, and he was a dominant Division III guy, just way more powerful, but he had a big old belly on him, and the body was kind of sloppy, but you could see there was an athlete underneath all that excess weight, right? And so Ron, the agent, kept sending me these clips of Rashawn Slater taking a rep, getting out on a pole, and then Quinn Miners doing it. And over the course of the fall, I was like, man, like, if we think Rashawn Slater is a high first-round pick, and this guy's, it didn't look that different, right? Like, it wasn't that dissimilar. So, we always leaned on the NFL teams and who they wanted to see play in the game. And at that point, all the teams had free agent grades on Quinn Miners. A couple teams maybe had 7th round grades, and I didn't blame them. That's what I would have given the kid off his off his whitewater tape. But seeing the training tape, I'm like, man, this guy's losing weight. His body's shaping up. Like you can see more of the athlete coming out. And we invited him to Mobile, and he absolutely kicks ass all week. And, ends up going in the third round of the draft. So, and here he is now. He's one of the top 5 paid guards in the NFL. He just got named first team All Pro. So incredible story. But again, give Quinn all the credit. Quinn put all the work in. He came in. He wasn't overwhelmed as a D3 guy blocking guys with Alabama and Georgia helmets. He just went out there and tried to kick people's ass all week. So to me, that's probably the biggest success story of the week. Sorry, I got long-winded with it, but that's the power of the Senior Bowl for me, man. I'm working here in Norman, Oklahoma, but I'm still passionate about what the Senior Bowl can do for players.
Know that a lot of agents, like you kind of touched on it. You said a lot of agents will pull their guy from the game, because there's the practices during the week, and then it culminates in a game, and whether a guy had a good practice all week and they feel like he's done enough, or they don't want to risk injury or whatever. What is your take? And then when you ran the game, what a nightmare that also has to become in terms of like, if a bunch of guys are getting out of the game, having a backfill to make sure you have enough guys on the roster. So how does that, what's your take on that? And what kind of work was behind the scenes going on?
Yeah, it's really kind of a new phenomenon, really, Todd. Like I'll be honest, like my first 3 or 4 years of the Senior Bowl, I loved that job. Loved it. Loved everything about it. But the last, 2, 3, 4 years with agents pulling players out, man, it was the end of the week was miserable.
Sure.
Every time your phone buzzed, or you got a text or a phone call, it was, hey Jim, my guy's leaving, and so it made it really challenging, to the point where I know Aaron knows this guy really well. There's the kid Braden Fisk for the LA Rams, really good player. I mean, that year I get a call at 6 a.m. from the D-line coach of one of the teams, and he was kind of having a freak out moment. He was like, man, I'm not going to be able to get through this game. We've only got 3 D tackles. I said, give me 15 minutes. I threw my clothes on. I ran to the office. I'm looking at the 2 deep, and I was like, okay, who can we move? One team had 6 defensive tackles. The other had 3. And because I know who Braden Fisk was and the way that kid is wired, I called Braden up. I'm like, man, meet me by the escalators at the hotel in a half hour. And he came down, and the 2 D-line coaches, one was from the Raiders and the other one was from the Dolphins. And they had worked together at one time. So, they're standing there with me. Braden's walking up, and you could see, like, he was like, okay, what am I walking up on here? What's going on? And I said, dog, you ready to make some history? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we're planning on flipping you teams, man. You're gonna play on I think he was on the national team, and he was going to play on the American team. And he looked at the D-line coaches, and he's like, are the calls the same? And they're like, yeah, the calls are the same. And he was like, all right, man, let's do it. And I gave him a big old hug, and again, I shared that story with all the NFL teams. How many kids would want to do that? How many kids would want to go play with a different set of guys? And in hindsight, the hard part is I had to pick the MVP for the game every year. So a lot of times it was easier to just watch a game and see like a skill player, do his thing. After the week, and that was one of my favorite weeks of the year, was actually being able to sit down and watch the practice tape and go through the game tape. Because during the week, I got all the GMs on the field and the agents, and I'm glad handing the whole week. Nobody watched less of Senior Bowl practice than me, trust me. So I love that next week. Had I had the benefit of watching the tape, Braden Fisk was the MVP of that Senior Bowl. I mean, he was all over the damn field making plays, and now you see what he's doing for the Rams. The guy's an animal. So that was the really hard part of that job the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, I'm sure. Last year I actually enjoyed it. My client Jack Besh had a great week, and obviously just the fairy tale ending, if that's the proper words, obviously with the tragedy and everything, and him catching the game winning touchdown was super, super special. And what a moment, after the game with his family down there. I think a month after his brother had, been killed in that New Orleans Day attack. But it was.
Can I cut you off real quick?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. So I mean, the best story. Obviously, you were super close to it, but Jack wore his brother's number 7 in the game to honor his brother, and then there was 7 seconds left on the clock when he caught the game-winning touchdown.
Yes.
Wow.
So I'll never forget. He gave me a hug on the field and told me he loved me, and how this whole week had changed his life. And yeah, I'd met his parents for the first time. I had talked to him on the phone, but met them on the field for the first time, and tears were flowing. It was honestly, I hope Jack has an incredible pro career, and I think he will. I think he's a really good player. But that was like a Disney movie that week, man. And I know a lot of people, and you can move mountains, Todd. But that story. Like, you can't make that stuff up. You
No.
can't make
Special.
up.
No,
Yeah,
it was awesome.
It was special.
I was at home watching the game because everyone, the agents and people leave for the game because we've been there all week and watch it on tape and or watch it on TV, and I'm watching with my daughter, and I explained to her that his brother had passed away, and she asked how, and I just didn't want to get into it, obviously. And then I was like, it'd be so great if he just caught the game-winning touchdown here. And then he did. And then, of course, immediately after the game, the reporter puts the microphone right in his mouth, and just went straight for it and said, it's been 1 year or 1 month since your brother was brutally murdered. I'm like, oh my God. So my sister, my daughter looks at me, I had to explain it to her. But, moving past that, if there's a way to move past that, my last question, and I could talk to you forever. And then we appreciate you so much for coming on. It's so awesome and insightful. The interview process, people who listen to the show and watch the draft, they don't really understand how many different elements go into evaluating a player. It's the tape when you go see him at college. It's the Senior Bowl. It's the pro day. It's the combine. It's the medical. But the interview is very big. And it's like, how good are they at board work, X's and O's? And I know, changed the process from when Aaron was there to more like, I guess, maybe a combine type setup. And we haven't got into it yet, but we will when we come start talking about the combine. Teams only get 60 formal interviews there. And so they can use the Senior Bowl as a way to take up one of those interview spots and then use the combine for a different player. Talk about the importance of the interview in overall and how the Senior Bowl and how you guys did that.
Yeah, it's huge, and it changed. Like I talked about, Aaron, when Aaron played in the game, I mean, I was one of those guys. I mean, there's the second floor of the Riverview Hotel in Mobile. I mean, it used to be a mosh pit of agents and financial people and scouts. And my first year there, it was still that way. And even I got off the elevator the first day and just tried to go have breakfast. And you couldn't even make your way through this sea of people without getting stopped. And so for the players, it made me step back and be like, this is really not a great setup for our players.
It's overwhelming.
They can't even go down to a common area without getting grabbed. And then really what forced the issue was we had our game during COVID. And, we really had to, we bought $10 worth of plexiglass for the interviews, and we had to formalize everything. So every team would get every guy for, I think it was 15 minutes that first year. Yeah. So no, the interviews are really critical, and teams use it for different reasons. Yeah. A lot of them do board work. I mean, every team has their own pod where the player, now they go around in like a snake formation around a convention center floor, and they meet with every team back to back to back. They do 60, when I was there, they did half the league one night and half the league the next night. So the hard part for the players was to get yourself in a mind frame at every new team, to not sound rehearsed and not sound like, just don't get, you gotta meet these people and know that this is the first time they're meeting you. So get locked back in. But I tell all the players, I just had this conversation with a couple of our Oklahoma guys that are going to Mobile, that they're meeting you for the first time. They're meeting you. These teams have been through Norman, Oklahoma all fall. And I've talked to all the NFL guys. Those are my people. They met with other guys on our staff and our coaches. But we've essentially been telling your story for you. This is critical, man. You open up. And I know it took me a long time. It probably took me until I was in my 40s where I could really open up and be vulnerable about stuff. But I tell all the players, I know your agents tell you to answer questions a certain way and they coach you up. And I said, that's fine. That's their job to do that. But the more vulnerable you can make yourself and talk about the hard shit you've been through in life, because that's what the teams want to hear about. When I worked for the Seahawks, Pete Carroll's first question was about adversity. Talk to me about what you've been through in life, because Aaron knows better than anybody. The NFL is a really hard league.
Yes.
And it ain't easy. So you're going to go through hard stuff. So in Seattle, we wanted to know, what hard stuff have you been through? How'd you navigate it? Who helped you get through it? Because you're going to face it. You're going to face it probably pretty quickly in the NFL. So the interview process is paramount, man. It really is. To me, it's just as important as the on the field stuff, and it's not just, and again, to the evaluation of what's important, it's not just Aaron, kicking the crap out of, the guys he went against in one-on-ones. You watch, just effort. Like, does he like to practice? Does he have a smile on his face? Is he engaged with his teammates? Like all that stuff matters in a week-long event like that. But yeah, the interview, just opening yourself up and letting the teams really know who you are, from your perspective, like it's big. It's really big. The teams lean into that a lot. I mean, and some teams probably value it more than others, but everyone values it to a good degree.
No, I mean, I know it's a value. I won't say which year, which player, but I had a guy that I sent to Senior Bowl because they had question marks, not on his ability. They said he's a first-round talent, but they had questions on his love for football, and they had question on his character. And actually, one team that I had talked to in the fall, ironically, literally told me, Todd, I love you. I can't have you. Just don't recruit this guy. You don't want to recruit him. And he just started reading off all the stuff. I was too deep into it, and I wasn't going to turn my back on the player. And I genuinely liked the player and his family, so I disagreed with it. And he wasn't saying he wasn't a good player. He was just saying off the field, he's just not, Todd, my type of guy, right? A good kid and all that. So I stayed the course and I did it all. And I did have him go to the Senior Bowl, and I did coach him, not necessarily on what to say, but to be engaged and to not look disinterested. And
be prepared.
The fact that they say you don't love football, like the fact that you are a first-round talent and you're going to be there, that's going to send a strong message in and of itself. And you played in your bowl game, and when you could have opted out, like a lot of guys do that wasn't in a CFP game. So we talked all through all that kind of stuff. And he went in there and he dominated on the field. He dominated the interview part, and then he continued to do it throughout the process. And the funny ending of the story is, not only did he get drafted first round, but by the team that told me not to. Yes, by the team.
You serious?
Yes, and that guy told me it was the biggest lesson inside their building to say, don't just judge off all the background information that you get. Spend time with the actual player. I mean, there's so many little things you learn during this process. It's no different than when a doctor told me when I had a player that was injured, he's like, examine the man, not the scan. And what he meant by that is like, the scan can say X, but if he's not symptomatic, you got to go with that type of stuff. So there's a lot of things you can pick up and learn. And Jim, you did a great job when you ran that game, and I appreciate you and all the information and obviously what you're doing at OU. And I mean, we could have you on for 10 more episodes. It's so awesome. It's so interesting to go so deep on all this stuff. So I appreciate it. And thank you so much for giving us all this time.
Appreciate the time, man. Appreciate it.
Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, Jim, we really appreciate it, man. Continued success, Boomer Sooner. And if we are able to get that one free waiver from the NFL and college football, make sure Todd and AD connect, and we can maybe negotiate that on another episode of the Inner Circle Pod.
Oh, we're winning this whole thing next year if we got Aaron lined up with 3 techniques.
Oklahoma will be the only team that plays with just 2 D linemen, Aaron and one other, and then and they've got
You'll be out there. I'm gonna be getting blocked by 4 or 5 guys. You do that.
It's okay. It's nothing you're not used to. Appreciate you, Jim.
Exactly.
Guys,
See you
guys.
All right, brothers, be in touch. He was fantastic, so insightful, and what he's got to deal with right now. I mean,
I know. You get a
over
picture over
100
here.
Contracts every single year. Guys staying, guys leaving.
It's funny because it is one of the biggest things he said is that it's hard because there's no database, there's no transparency, right? And he's not wrong. That is a huge advantage that we as an agency have because we have our own database, because we're doing so many deals across the board with so many guys throughout the country at so many different schools, 5 stars, 4 stars, different production levels. We have the database. We know these schools don't, and they're trying to find it, and they're calling other GMs, and who knows if those GMs are sharing accurate information, that type of stuff, because they're all so competitive.
Exactly.
I mean, I know that agents wouldn't share accurate information with each other. So it's interesting, and it's definitely a problem in the landscape that exists for the college side. But
It's a cutthroat business, man. We know that.
brutal.
Always gonna try to find a way to be the top dog, man. Come with
Gray
it.
hair doesn't come because it's not cutthroat. I can tell you that.
I got me some grays somewhere. I just cut them off, man.
All the guys that gave me gray hair, Aaron used to take gray hairs away when I'd watch him and talk to him.
It.
Be like, oh,
Every
okay.
single Sunday.
Yeah. So,
All
anyways,
right, guys. That was a
appreciate
great
you guys.
episode.
Yep.
Aaron, Rams, we're watching from the house. 1 win away from your guys heading to San Francisco. How you feeling? Where are we watching?
Hey, look, this is NFC Championship. This is the first time the Rams been in NFC. I'm used to being there. So guess what? I'm gonna be there in person, man. I can't watch that one on the couch. I'm flying to Seattle and I'll be at that game firsthand. I gotta see that. See my guys.
Isn't there that one fan in the Seattle that we talked about that's like always over the tunnel? Are you going to go find that guy?
I'm gonna go find him, say something to him, but I got to be there in person to see this one. I'm proud of my guys getting to this point. I'm one game away from the big dance, man. So I got to go see this one live, man. I'm pumped up about it. I'm excited about it, man. And hopefully they get it done. So we're going to see.
So where does Aaron Donald watch this game? Are you on the sidelines the whole game? Are you in the owner's box? Like, are you suiting up in the locker room? Like, where are you watching this game?
I don't know. I'll start off on the field and then probably go to the box, nice. Where a little warmer. But, I'll be there, and see them boys get it done against, Seattle's defense, solid, right? Ernest Jones was a guy who won a Super Bowl with his rookie year. He's been playing lights out at that linebacker position, 6 interceptions this year as a middle linebacker. Obviously, that D-line been getting after. I think they got a really good defense on that Seattle team. So it's a good challenge for the Rams, man. But again, Sam Darnold, he got to show me. He got to prove it to me that he can get it done in a big game. I don't know. So I'm gonna trust my Rams to get it done. This young Rams defense, they've been playing pretty good ball. To get the job done. Matthew Stafford, they've been in this stage before, they've done it before. Obviously, the great Sean McVay. So, I'm rooting for my dogs.
Safe travels, man. Have an amazing time. Stay warm. Good luck to your Rams, and looking forward to connecting next week with you and Todd and everybody here on the Inner Circle podcast. We appreciate your time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week on the show.